Picture a doctor making $300,000 a year, or a lawyer billing 60 hours every week. On paper, they have made it. But behind closed doors, many are quietly living paycheck to paycheck, just one bad month away from total financial panic. This video is going to sting because you might realize you are already practicing some of these habits without even knowing they have a name. By the end of our time today, you will see exactly why a high salary is not a wealth strategy. I am going to show you the specific shifts that separate people who simply earn well from those who actually build well. I'm Penny, and I've spent over a decade watching people do everything right. They have the big titles and the big paychecks, yet they stay financially stuck. There is a huge difference between being broke and being stuck. Being stuck is actually more dangerous because it is easier to ignore. I learned the hard way that your income is just raw material. It is like having a pile of bricks. What you actually build with those bricks is the real game. Today, I'm breaking down 6 specific habits that quietly destroy wealth, even when you are making 6 figures. We will also look at the tension between earning and saving that nobody talks about honestly. Finally, I will give you a 3-step action plan you can start this week. Let's get into it. The first habit we need to talk about is what I call the delayed lifestyle upgrade. Most people fall into a mental trap where they tell themselves, once I finally make more money, I will get my finances in order. The problem is that when the raise actually happens, the money gets swallowed up almost instantly. But before a single investment is made, that extra cash is already going toward a newer car, a bigger apartment, or more expensive vacations. Because there was no plan in place, the higher income just buys a more expensive version of the same stressful life. The numbers back this up. According to a 2023 report from Pimps and Lending Club, 61% of adults earning over $100,000 a year say they still live paycheck to paycheck at least some of the time. This proves that a high salary doesn't fix a lack of a system. If your spending grows as fast as your paycheck, you aren't getting richer. You are just running faster on a treadmill that never ends. Wealthy people avoid this by practicing something called lifestyle lag. This is a simple but powerful move where you deliberately freeze your spending for 6 to 12 months after you get a raise. Instead of changing how you live, you act like the extra money doesn't exist and send it directly into your savings or investments. I learned this lesson the hard way. Early in my career, I received a raise of $1,200 a month. I was so excited. But 3 months later, I realized I couldn't tell you where that money went. I had a much nicer gym membership and I was eating at better restaurants, but my brokerage account hadn't grown by a single cent. I had more stuff, but I wasn't any closer to freedom. The fix for this is to make a promise to yourself in writing before the money ever hits your bank account. Commit to freezing your lifestyle for at least 6 months whenever your income goes up. During those 6 months, set up an automatic transfer to move that extra money straight into your assets. By the time you decide to upgrade your life, you will have already built a solid foundation of wealth. The second habit is what I call the leftovers savings approach. This is how most people handle their money. They get paid, spend the whole month paying everyone else, and then hope there is something left to save at the end. The problem is that life is expensive. And most months, there is absolutely nothing left. In this model, saving is just a feeling or a good intention, rather than a real system. When you save this way, you are giving everyone else your money and only keeping the crumbs for yourself. The reality of this approach is quite shocking. A 2024 survey from Bankrate found that 57% of Americans cannot cover a $1,000 emergency using their savings. This isn't just a problem for people with low incomes. It happens to doctors and lawyers, too, because they never make saving a priority. If you wait to see what is left over at the end of the month, you are essentially betting against your own future. Truly wealthy people do the exact opposite. They follow a rule called pay yourself first, which was made famous by David Bach in his book, The Automatic Millionaire. The idea is simple. The very first bill you pay every month is to your future self. They set up their bank accounts so that money moves into savings or investments the very second their paycheck arrives. This makes spending the variable that changes, while saving stays a constant, non-negotiable habit. I remember being stuck in this trap myself. I spent 2 years planning to save more. I had plenty of spreadsheets and big goals, but my bank balance never really moved. Everything changed the month I finally stopped thinking and just set up a $200 automatic transfer for the day after my payday. It felt like a small amount at the time, but because it was automatic, I actually did it. I ended up saving more money in just 60 days than I had in the entire previous year combined. The fix for this is very easy, and you can do it right now. Set up one automatic transfer from your checking account to a separate savings account, even if it is just $50. Schedule it for the day after your pay hits your account. By doing this, you remove the need for willpower. You don't have to make a difficult choice every month, because the system makes the choice for you. When the money is moved before you even have a chance to spend it, you simply learn to live on what remains. The third habit is one that hits high earners the hardest, and I call it the credential debt trap. To become a doctor or a lawyer, you have to spend a lot of money on school. Most people front-load all that education debt in their 20s. Then they spend their 30s just trying to pay it back. The problem is that while they are focused only on paying off those loans, they aren't building any assets. They end up missing out on the decade that matters most for compounding, which is when your money grows the fastest over time. The numbers for these degrees are staggering. Based on 2024 data from the Education Data Initiative, the average medical school graduate starts their career with $202,000 in student loan debt. Law school graduates aren't far behind, averaging about $130,000. When you are sitting on a mountain of debt that large, it is natural to feel like you need to get rid of it as fast as possible, before you do anything else. However, wealthy people look at debt differently. They don't see it as a moral burden or something to be ashamed of. They see it as a math problem. They use a strategy called rate arbitrage. This just means they compare the interest rate they are paying on their debt to the interest they could earn by investing. They aggressively pay off high-interest debt, but they also start investing at the same time if their loan rates are low. They understand that being in the market for a longer time usually beats the small amount of money saved by rushing to pay off a low-interest loan. I learned this lesson by doing it the wrong way. Early on, I decided to pause all of my investing because I wanted to kill my debt first. It took me 3 years of intense focus to get that balance to zero. But later, I sat down and did the math. I realized that the compounding growth I missed out on during those 3 years actually cost me much more than the interest I saved by paying the loans off early. I had zero debt, but I was actually poorer than I would have been if I had done both at the same time. The fix for this is to stop guessing and look at the numbers. Find out exactly what your loan interest rate is. If your rate is under 6% or 7%, you should probably run both strategies at once. Pay the minimum amount required on your loans, but also set up automatic contributions to an index fund. By doing this, you keep your debt under control, while making sure you don't waste those valuable years when your money has the most power to grow. Habit number 4 is what I call the single-stream income illusion. This is a very common trap for people with impressive titles. They begin to treat their salary as their entire financial identity. They think, I am a partner at this firm, or I am a head surgeon. And they assume that because their paycheck is large, they are safe. But relying on one employer for all your money is actually very risky. If that one stream of income stops, everything else falls apart. Instead of building new ways to make money, most people just try to work more hours at their main job. They trade more of their time for money, but they remain completely vulnerable. The data shows a very different path for the truly wealthy. According to IRS tax data, the average millionaire does not rely on just one source of income. In fact, they have an average of 7 different streams of income. They might have a salary, but they also have money coming in from stocks, rental properties, or small side businesses. They don't put all their eggs in one basket, because they know that even the best job can disappear. Wealthy people follow a strategy that author M.J. DeMarco calls income diversification. They treat their salary as a capital base. This means they see their paycheck as a pile of seeds that they can plant to grow other things. They don't see the salary as the final destination. They see it as the fuel they use to build parallel income channels that don't require them to be at a desk 60 hours a week. I had a wake-up call about this a few years ago. I was doing very well with a major consulting client, and I felt on top of the world. Then that client went quiet for 6 weeks. Suddenly, I realized that my high income was really just one phone call away from being zero. That was the week I decided to start building a second stream of income. It wasn't anything fancy at first. It only brought in about $400 a month. But that small amount of money changed how I thought about wealth forever. I realized I didn't have to be a victim of a single boss or client. The fix for this habit is not to quit your job or start a giant company today. Instead, I want you to identify just one skill you use at your job that someone outside of your office would pay for. Maybe you are great at organizing data, writing reports, or giving advice. Find one way to offer that skill to someone else just one time this month. The goal isn't the extra money right now. The goal is the mental shift of realizing you can create value on your own. Once you see that you can create a second stream, the single stream illusion loses its power over you. Habit number 5 is what I call the status spending spiral. In high-paying jobs like medicine or law, there is often an invisible social tax that people feel forced to pay. You feel like you need the luxury car that matches your title, the house in the specific neighborhood where your coworkers live, or the designer wardrobe that your clients expect to see. At this point, your spending is no longer about what you need, or even what you enjoy. It becomes identity maintenance. You are spending huge amounts of money just to keep up a certain image of success. The weight of this pressure is very real and shows up in the data. According to the 2023 Medscape Physician Wealth Report, 70% of doctors report feeling financial stress despite their high salaries. The top reason they give for this stress is lifestyle inflation. Even though they are pulling in big paychecks, they are spending it all to look the part, which leaves them feeling trapped and worried about the future. Truly wealthy people follow a different path. In the famous book, The Millionaire Next Door, Thomas Stanley talks about prodigious accumulators of wealth. These are people who are masters at building money because they deliberately live below their income level. They are often invisibly wealthy. They don't feel the need to perform or show off their prosperity to the world. They would rather have the security of a large investment account than the attention that comes with a flashy car. I had to learn this lesson through my own mistake. Years ago, I bought a very expensive watch. I told myself it was an investment. But the truth was, I just wanted it to communicate success to my clients. I wanted them to see it and think I was doing well. 3 years later, I had a slow business quarter and needed extra cash. I ended up selling that watch just to cover my bills. I realized then that the watch hadn't built anything for me. It didn't provide a safety net or grow my wealth. It just looked like it did. The fix for this habit is an honest audit. I want you to look back at your spending from the last 30 days. Find one purchase. Just one. That you made primarily because of how it would appear to others. Maybe it was a label on a shirt, or a premium service you didn't really need. You don't have to cut the expense right now. For today, I just want you to name it. Once you call it out for what it is, you take away its power to quietly drain your future. The sixth and final habit is what I call DIY investing paralysis. Most high earners are very smart people who are used to being experts in their fields. Because you are smart, you want to understand every single detail before you take action. You know you should be investing, so you start reading books and watching videos. But the more you learn, the more confused you feel. You see thousands of different stocks and complicated strategies, so you decide to wait until you know more. Before you know it, years have passed, and your money has just been sitting in a bank account losing value. This waiting has a very high cost. A 2022 Vanguard Investor Behavior Study found that the average investor waits until they are 31 years old to start investing seriously. If they had started at 22, they would have had nearly an extra decade for their money to grow. In the world of wealth, time is your most powerful tool. By waiting 9 years to feel ready, you are losing out on a massive amount of compound growth that you can never get back. You are essentially paying a waiting tax that costs you hundreds of thousands of dollars in the long run. Wealthy people handle this by keeping things simple. They don't try to find the perfect individual stock on day one. Instead, they start with the simplest tool available, a low-cost index fund. An index fund is just a way to own a tiny piece of many different companies all at once. They understand an important truth. A simple plan that you start today is much better than a perfect plan that you start 3 years from now. They get their money moving first and worry about making the strategy perfect later. I struggled with this for a long time. I once spent 14 months researching different stocks. I had lists of companies and pages of notes, but I hadn't actually bought a single share. I was stuck in my own head, afraid of making a mistake. Finally, I got so frustrated that I just put $500 into a total market index fund, just to stop the overthinking. That $500 didn't change my life by itself, but the act of finally starting did. It broke the spell of waiting, and finally turned me into an investor, instead of just someone who talked about it. The fix for this habit is to lower the bar so much that it is impossible to fail. This week, I want you to log into your brokerage or retirement account. Don't worry about a complex strategy yet. Just buy one share, or even just $1, of a broad market index fund. By doing this, you aren't committing to a lifelong plan. You are simply committing to the act of starting. Once you own even a tiny piece of the market, the fear of the unknown starts to disappear, and you can finally start building real wealth. Now, we need to look at a truth that almost nobody in the finance world addresses directly. You have probably seen hundreds of videos telling you to stop buying expensive coffee, cancel your Netflix, and spend every Sunday prepping cheap meals. None of that is wrong, but we have to be honest. That strategy has a ceiling. A very hard one. Think of it this way. If you earn $60,000 a year and you manage to cut 20% of your expenses, you have freed up $12,000. That is impressive, but $12,000 is the absolute most you can get from that move. Your savings are locked in place by how much you currently earn. You can only cut so much before you have nothing left to take away. You can't save more than you actually make. But look at what happens when you focus on earning. If you grow your income by that same 20%, maybe through a raise at work, a side income, or a small business, you also get an extra $12,000. The difference is that this ceiling isn't fixed. It keeps moving upward. While there is a limit to how much you can save, there is technically no limit to how much you can earn. Let's look at the math one more time. Cutting $200 out of your monthly budget saves you $2,400 a year. That is a great way to start. However, if you add $200 a month from a side income, you get that same $2,400, but that income has the power to grow. By year 3, that $200 a month could easily become $800 a month as you get better at your craft. Cutting doesn't compound, but earning does. I want to be clear. this is not an excuse to stop saving. You should still save aggressively and automate your accounts. But you must stop treating cost-cutting as your entire wealth strategy. Think of your money like a car. Being frugal is like having great fuel efficiency. It makes sure you don't waste what you have. But growing your income is the engine that actually moves the car forward. You need both to get where you want to go. If you only focus on saving, you are just a very efficient car sitting in the driveway. Use your saving habits as your foundation, but use your earning power as the engine that drives you toward real wealth. Now, I don't want you to just walk away with more information. Knowledge without action is just a hobby, and we are here to build wealth. I want you to take one real physical step this week. You don't have to do all 3 things I'm about to list. In fact, I only want you to pick one. Focus on mastering that single task, and once you've done it, you can come back and try another. The first option is to set up one automatic transfer from your checking account to savings or investment account. Schedule it for the day after your next payday. The exact amount of money does not matter right now. Even $25 is perfectly fine. The goal isn't the total dollar amount. The goal is the automation. Once the system is running, you are officially building wealth while you sleep. The second option is to find out what your time is actually worth. Open a spreadsheet or just the Notes app on your phone and calculate your real hourly rate. Take your total monthly pay after taxes. Then divide it by the actual hours you spent on work. This includes your time at the office, but also your commute and any time you spent preparing at home. Write that final number down somewhere. You will see it every day. When you know your real hourly rate, it changes how you think about every dollar you spend. The third option is to prepare for your second stream of income. Think about your current job and list one skill you use there that someone else would pay for. Then write just one sentence describing who that person or business might be. You don't have to pitch it or sell anything yet. Just name it. That single sentence is the seed for your second stream of income. Pick just one of these actions and get it done. Drop a comment right now and tell me, which one are you committing to this week? Is it action 1, 2, or 3? I read every single comment, and I want to see you take that first step. If this video hit you differently than you expected, please share it with one person who needs to hear this truth. They probably won't thank you immediately, but they will eventually.